Alright, so after you have your pattern pieces cut, you should have 2 fronts and 2 backs. And what I recommend is just keeping a pin in them to keep them together. So you can tell the front from the back, okay, because the back has quite a deep curve. The back is more curved because you have a bottom and you need to make space for your bottom. Okay, so what your first step is going to be is to sew the inner leg seam. So you can take out your pins. And if you imagine these shorts, so here's my 2 front pieces. Let's open up the front pieces. So now we're looking at the right side of the fabric. If you imagine these shorts on a body, okay, this is essentially what it's going to look like. So the first seam that you're going to sew is this seam right here called the inner leg seam. So what I want you to do is I want you to be looking at the right sides of the front piece, so the piece that's less curved. Then you're going to take one back and match it to one front at the inner leg seams. So you're going to lay it down. Here's our inner leg seams. Okay, so double check that you do have the right sides touching. You do not want to put it together like this with the wrong sides touching. If you do that, what will happen is that when you sew it, you will have the seam allowance on the outside. And you want all seam allowances in the inside of your garment. So then you're going to match the inner leg seam together. You're going to grab your pins. And the only thing you're matching here is right here at this inner leg seam. You're not worried about this not matching, or this, or this, or the bottom, okay? This is the only thing you're worried about. So you're going to take your fabric, you're going to line up the ends, you're going to put a pin all the way in and all the way out, okay, right at the very end. Then you're going to come back down and you're going to pin all the way in and all the way out at the end. Okay, and then you're going to go back and you're going to pin in between. So you can probably add 2 or 3 pins in between. Okay, so as you pin, check to make sure that you have pinned all the way through, and then flip it over and check to make sure that your edges are even. So they should be even on this side and even on this side. Some of you, when you pin, if you're not careful, will pin and think it's even. Okay, and then when you go to flip it over, you will realize that it's not even. If you sew it this way, okay, you could end up possibly with a hole in your inner leg seam. So as you're pinning it, you're lining up those edges, moving the edges yourself. Okay, the fabric will not move on its own. You need to pick it up and move it. And once you have it pinned, you want to check to make sure that you have it even on both edges. And make sure you pin perpendicular to your sewing line. So you're going to sew this way. Okay, if you pin like so, and you think about the needle sewing down here, the needle has a high likelihood of hitting this pin versus the first pin we put in. So make sure your pin heads, the colorful part of the pin, are always sticking along the cut edge. You're going to do the same thing to the other side, and once you have the 2 edges pinned, then you can go ahead and do your first straight stitch.